Welcome to Convicted Hearts. I am your host, Jen Magana, and I am back with a guest that I have been wanting to have on for so long. I've been admiring you from afar, Maria, and I am so honored to have you here today on Convicted Hearts.
Well, thank you for having me. I think our conversation is going to feel a lot of not only our own generation, but younger generations of what the hope is for empowered women, right? Coming from our background. So it is an honor. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yes, I've been enjoying your, IG lives and the videos you post are very encouraging. And I want to start out, just a little bit about you and sort of
Mhm.
your younger years coming up and how you
Mhm.
flourished into the woman you are today and with Homegirls de Corazon, like how
Mhm.
this came to be. Let's see, how did you come up? Like, where did you grow up at?
So I'm from the Coachella Valley. I grew up in Indio. Well, I was pretty much planted there in my second grade year of school, and but it's always been home to me.
Hmm.
That was a space where I got to learn what community was. I learned where like what friendships could be for me. It's where I lived with a lot of my struggles in my
Mm,
growing up, and I grew up in an adopted home. It was never a secret, but never did I think the knowing that I was adopted would have an impact on abandonment issues in my life. So I experienced a lot growing up. My dad was an alcoholic, and he was my savior, and I was his. It was a very codependent relationship. And my mother, we're in a really beautiful healing process right now. But at that time, and she has said like she couldn't love me the way I needed to be loved at that time, and as a little girl, we were always longing for that love, that woman who's going to inspire you or you want to be just like. And I just couldn't find that connection. And I think just the things I grew up experiencing and not having the availability of those parents being there for me had a huge impact that led me into the streets.
absolutely, absolutely, that would. So you said you knew, from
Mhm.
the beginning that you were adopted. Did you have other siblings in the home?
They were able to have a son, my brother, who about 2.5 years later after they had adopted me.
Mhm.
So that did cause some kind of, like a divide. I will admit it was painful because I was always looking for that connection. And when you have a brother who, is their blood, there is a little bit of difference. But it did impact me. But I thank goodness I'm where I'm at today because
Yeah,
I can talk about these things and not allow it to run my life anymore. I know that I'm worthy of being able to have the two parents that I did have.
absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. So what did that look like, as far as you, as you got older, getting into your teenage years, getting out, into the streets, and how did that manifest, like, in your life?
And it's funny because it's gonna go back to like the work I do with Homegirlz de Corazon. And so what it was I had experiences growing up, many women and men, and we don't talk about it, right? I was sexually assaulted at the age of 7. The impact it had on me, it was like, like we spoke earlier about like my weight. I began to eat my emotions. I didn't know how to deal with that, and it was something that I numbed really deep within.
Hmm.
It didn't come out till I was in my 8th grade year. A friend was sharing a situation she was dealing with, and it just opened up like a flood of my memories. And I remember sharing with her about that experience, and I was like, "Please don't tell my mom. Please don't tell your mom." I was so scared, and I don't want to go into how it occurred with my mom and how she found out. I didn't have the defense of a parent that I needed when that
Hmm.
kind of situation is brought to light, right?
Right.
So that between the weight, and a mother, and I look at it like this: my mom has always been a very healthy eater, wanting the best for us, and so for her, it was like, you know, I'll take you on a $100 shopping spree on Rodeo Drive if you lose 10 pounds. They had me in Weight Watchers when I was 9. And I remember going to a meeting and being in a room full of older women and me being a child, and it kind of shamed me. So I grew up in a lot of shame, and it was something I didn't know how to work with. I didn't know how to talk about it. I just knew I lived in it. And so that kind of what led me to the streets. I was always looking for connections and acceptance. Acceptance, sorry.
Yeah.
And acceptance, I work with the youth and you hear this all the time. My home was chaotic. Um, the family was going through a divorce. We moved. It was like my dad was in his full blown disease of alcoholism. I was trying to take care of him, not knowing how to even take care of myself. So the streets was a space that I didn't feel alone. My home was very lonely. I had other hurt people who were in the same spaces, dealing with their own traumas. And it kind of, we trauma bonded. And I can now like recognize that today. At that time, it was just like, I'm hitting the streets. I remember this one homegirl, she told me, she goes, "You look so mean. You scare us girls." And that was never my intention. But I
Right.
also know I was carrying the weight of what I had in my heart, right? On my face.
Yes.
But knowing that, even though it didn't feel good, I owned it. I was like, okay, this is going to be my mask. This is who I'm going to sell myself to be. And something that's really important that I talk about is like us women, even on the streets, there's a different mentality than it is with our men, right?
Mm-hmm.
Men can have issues, they can box it out and they're good. Us
Yep.
women, we hold on to it emotionally. And there's like, I'm going to get you before you get me kind of thought process that comes out of it. So even on the streets, I wasn't really hanging with the homegirls. I got jumped into the hood, but it was the guys because I was always looking for that protector that I needed when I was a young child, the
Yeah.
protector that I needed when my mom found out, right?
Yeah.
And so I hear this all the time with our young women, and so I spent a long time just trying to be somebody that I really wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
I had many, many layers of masks. Like they say, anger is like the second feeling under so many other feelings, which is shame, guilt, embarrassment, loneliness, sadness. And that was who Marilena was when she hit the streets. And, you know, um, I was a teen mom at 17.
Mm-hmm.
I was honestly not sure who the father was. Um, I was, and I can say this now, and I will say it here because I want to honor other women too, right?
Yes.
They say the word promiscuous comes, is that there's that negative
Sure.
thought behind it, but what
Mhm.
it really was the things I experienced growing up. So, there was multiple partners. There was just someone, I need you to love me, and it didn't. I just you can't find love if you don't know how to love yourself, especially if
Right.
you're finding it on the streets, right? And there's
Yes.
other men. The guys are, they're just as hurt as we are. It just looks different. And so I tend to find I want the biggest, the baddest, the one who's going to protect me. But what that ended up leading to is relationships that were very toxic. I kept having children, different fathers,
Mm-hmm.
and it led me into a space where not only addiction of methamphetamines, 20 plus years of that. I kept having children and I kept using while I was pregnant with them,
Mm-hmm.
and it's had a huge impact on my children. It's had a huge impact on how my parents were best they could parent with me, but I had to pretty much raise myself, and that that comes from the streets, that comes with the lifestyle, and it comes with a lot um, of anger, a lot of anger inside of me.
Sure.
So
Absolutely. That's a lot. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a lot. You just being a teen mom alone, despite all of the other layers, of what you
yeah,
had going on in life is difficult. And then, addiction, I feel like, and maybe you can chime in on this too with me, like that's a way for us to kind of cope, right? To
yeah,
cover up our traumas or try to numb ourselves and get through.
yeah.
And we're just creating a bigger monster to deal with.
Yes, yeah. The disease of addiction is real,
Mhm.
um, and I think something I heard on a TED talk one time really blew my mind, and it was after already having a couple of years of being clean. But it was that when we numb ourselves with behind our addiction, we're trying to numb the painful parts, the hurt, the fear, the all that sadness, loneliness. But we forget once you've had a taste of happiness, it also numbs that. And that can be a very painful place to be once you've experienced even a little bit of living in happiness. And you have a relapse state, it becomes very, very painful because I love being happy. I love being who I am today. But, there was moments when I would have slips when I would try to get clean or try to get my kids back from CPS. But
Mhm.
then I realized, oh my God, that's why I was so miserable. On top of everything that comes behind the meth life, right?
Right.
Um, there is also like, I'm trying to find my happiness. Why can't I find it? Well, it's because I'm stuck in the bathroom with a pipe, or I'm on the streets running game, trying to come up on my next fix.
Yeah.
And for that kind of lifestyle, there's just no happiness in it.
Right. And it's almost like sometimes you can forget what happiness even felt like.
Mm, yeah.
I mean, for myself, anyways, there was times
Yeah.
where I had forgot what it even felt like. But
Yeah. And we self sabotage, right? Like,
yes.
we have lived in so much pain for long. When we have that happiness, and this is just the reality of our background, is that there's a tendency to self-sabotage. We will
Mhm.
mess it up because we're not used to it. We're just
Right.
waiting for someone to take it away from us, so we rather do it first.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So when you're having, this addiction process going on and you're having children, were your family, were they there and able to sort of help um, with taking care of the kids, or what, how did that work?
Well, it's a roller coaster, right? My family, my mom and my dad, my dad finally went through his different phases of being sober, which was very helpful because it did help me have my kids,
Mhm.
and he helped parent me the best he could as I was learning to be an adult.
Yeah.
My mom also was very supportive. But with behind that support, mind you, trying to get clean in a home where people or family trying to support you, but to understand the addiction sometimes, it's really hard when you're still being shamed.
Mm.
So there was many relapses. My parents did show up, thank goodness. At one point, I did lose my first three children to CPS, and I
Mhm.
was pregnant with my fourth child. And the insanity of our addiction, or my addiction, was that because so you guys know I'm from the Coachella Valley, San Diego area, but I live in Tijuana. But during
Okay.
that time, I had moved to Tijuana for him, the
Mhm.
guy that I was my fourth son, my fourth child, my son. His father was over here, and I gotten pregnant, and so there, I'll just be honest. I've lived in majority of my relationships have been domestic violence, and my kids have seen that, and so long story short, I was able to leave him because the violence was so bad, but CPS took my kids.
Mhm.
And I remember crossing the border from Tijuana and going home and showing up there. And let me start the story over because it has a deeper
Yeah.
meaning to it. And I think the audience can probably relate.
Mhm.
Um, I had left the father of my son because the violence was so bad, not only on me, but my other son, Gino. Um, and I can share about that because he's aware of it and it's part of our healing process, right?
Mhm.
Um, but he was 2 years old, had experienced abuse, abandonment from his mom. I remember one day trying to go back to Tijuana for another guy and for the dope. And my son was in a diaper. My dad was passed out drunk in his bedroom at the time, 'cause that's when he wasn't sober. And my little boy walked up to me with banana, banana, banana. I had my dad's car packed already. I'm gonna go do laundry to stay, right? And it's like my son knew that I
Mhm.
wasn't coming back. And in that moment, all I could do is what I knew how to do, no matter how painful it was, right? I
Right.
gave him his piece of a banana. I took him to the couch and I left him there and I walked out. And I knew when I came home, whenever I decided to come home, my kids would not be there. I knew that instinct within me told me, and I still left. So,
Mhm.
3 weeks later, I come back. The house is completely black. I had dope on me, and I walked in. I'm like, Dad, Dad, like, and he was still passed out in the bedroom like normal. And where are the kids? And he was like, the paperwork's in the kitchen table. CPS came, and it was the most. It hit my own abandonment issues because I could remember my own abandonment, how that felt, begging for my parents at times when they weren't there for me, or they'd
Mhm.
go on vacation, just like that loss, right? And all I could think is my kids are feeling this loss, and it filled that fire. And honestly, all I could do was go into the bedroom and get high the
Yeah.
last time. And the next day I called CPS. They told me when to go to court, and I fought for a whole year to get my kids back, and thank goodness I did. And but I'm not gonna lie, 6 months later I was getting high again after they were back home. So after that, my parents are like, my dad got sober. My mom was like, I'll take these kids. I
Mhm.
ended up having another baby after the other baby, and so they were raised by my family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it sounds similar to a lot of our stories. You know what I mean? It's a cycle that's difficult to get out of and break, but it's inspiring to hear stories like yours where you have done just that and you're on a path to healing. I think that's what's so important for other women and men to hear, even, but
Yes, yes,
definitely the homegirls need to hear this.
yes.
Yes. So going from there, I mean, what did it look like going forward? Did you come to a point where you ever had any issues with face incarceration or anything like that? Or what did
So I went through the juvenile system. I was pregnant with my first child when I was in the juvenile system. When I share my story and I go speak, I always talk about my daughter was incarcerated before she was even born. I remember being in shackles, going to court, and being pregnant. There's like the stigma behind it, like you're a bad mom on top of now you're a criminal, right?
Yeah.
And so I carried that weight on my shoulders for a long time. I did some county time. I did a little close to 8 months. I'm not gonna lie, there's something bigger and better. I will honestly say taking care of me because I should be doing time, and I can own that today. And that's why I do what I do. It started off doing this work because of fear of getting locked up, but it ended up being in a space that this is what I meant to do. I'm
Mhm.
supposed to give back because I took a lot. I hurt a lot of people out there.
Yeah. I think this is a beautiful way for you to shift all of that pain, shame, like everything you went through, excuse me, and pour it into something that, is going to help
Mhm.
so many others and already has really. Why
Mhm.
don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about Homegirls de Corazon?
So, 2011, I moved to San Diego. I hit rock bottom, and my dad told me I had to do something different. That was me getting clean. And so, when I get clean, I have to have a purpose. That's just who I am. That's something they say do things that make you feel good. So I got clean. I did programs, and I went to school. And education opened the door for me. I remember one time a professor had invited me to an event and had said something to a major organizer in the nonprofit world and said, she's a leader. And I was
Mhm.
like, who? Me?
Right?
And I
Yeah.
think that was a life changing moment for me.
Mhm.
And I go back to that because I never thought I was. But I think back now, even being on the streets, and I always had a leadership position. Yeah, I was always trying to
Mhm.
help people get clean, even though I was still getting loaded. It
Yeah.
was just that kind of mentality that I've always had in me. And I know that's my little girl within me that hasn't been contaminated by my trauma, right? As an inner
Mm.
part of me that's like, okay, you still gotta love people. And so what grew out of that is, I started getting into huge leadership roles. As a formerly incarcerated leader, and I love that work. But I kept seeing something, even in the work, working with people who are formerly incarcerated, and they could be at the top level of the work, right? But they're still hurting each other. The
Mhm.
behaviors still continue. And and then I began to see, like I was diving into relationships here and there, being clean. And I remember there was a situation, and I don't want to go too much into it, but it was a
Mhm.
woman hit me up 6 p.m. On Facebook. I got a message, and she's like, so and so is this, and he's talking this about you. I'm doing this with him, and it was just a real shaming message at me. And I'd be, being sober for some time. It was like, oh wow, I can be really reactive, and I could tear her apart with my tongue because I that was my saving grace, right? Like many times I put myself in situations and I can break someone with my hurt and
Yes.
hurt them back, and I had a choice to make, and I was working for a well-known nonprofit at the time, and it was a reality check because like she was pregnant, and in my head I was going to go to LA and I was going to pull her out of her apartment. I was going to beat her ass. I don't care what the
Mhm.
consequences are. And but that was my ego and pride. And
Yeah.
but another part of me was like, no, Marie, you can't live like you don't live like that no more. And it was the first time that I experienced reaching out to women. Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to LA and I'm wearing a dress and heels, driving to work to this big old office. And I'm
Right?
like, and it was the moment of like, you don't do this anymore. Like, you work so hard to be. And it was up and uplifting. And it really pulled me out of an old behavior. And
Mhm.
I realized, wow, these homegirls were here for me. And I really began to dig deep and realize that, us women looking back and talking to many other women, like it was always, we never had women friends. I remember having best friends growing up, but not real best friends. And I didn't experience my first best friend until 2012 when I moved to San
Mhm.
Diego in recovery. And it was like, wow, it's not the men I need to be focusing on, it's the women. And
Right.
so I had to let go of that anger at that message because I understood the person behind it was hurt. I remember being hurt. I remember sending those kind of messages, and so I had to be empathetic. And that was
Mhm.
another lesson in empathy for me. And so Homegirls del Corazon was based on looking at our core issues, looking at the core trauma that we've experienced. And what it does is I have workshops that I do in the juvenile halls, and we also do in recovery homes. is a
Mhm.
space for women to understand like those core issues do not define you. They're a part of your experience. And we use the rose concept because
Mhm.
the rose is beautiful, right? But we do also have moments of where we wilt. So it's looking at those core issues, the things we experience between our age ranges until we hit our teenage years, when majority of our actions begin to come showing out of our anger, our fears, our
Mhm.
loneliness, all those feelings, right?
Right.
And it's unraveling it and understanding that our story is important. Like going back to what I experienced at 7 years old. I didn't have anyone to voice that fear, but I speak openly about it to young women and to women, and they're just like, "Wow, thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that." Um, so it helps women kind of begin to have these conversations that aren't normal for our community. It's not normal for even my age range, our generations, and it's learning to like call it out, to be
Right.
empowered behind it, and so that's what Homegirls of Corazon is based on, and we're building into the community. We're working, like I said, this curriculum for the juvenile hall has been an amazing experience.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's Homegirls of Corazon for you.
Love that. I love that. That is something that, gosh, looking back, even for myself, I really could have used something like this growing up, you know? So
Yeah,
it's definitely needed in our community. I love that.
thank you.
I just really admire what you've done with your turning your pain into this group to support. And another thing, looking back on that incident you just touched on briefly,
Mhm.
I love how your homegirls told you and reminded you who you were in that moment
Yes.
rather than say, okay, let's go, let's roll. You know what I mean? Because we
Yeah.
all know that one, the way that goes too.
Because that's really what I was looking for, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
they showed me love and compassion, and that was so different for me, right?
Mhm.
I'm not used to being treated like that by women. It's like it's usually like, I'm gonna get your dope, your man, or whatever money you have off you. I'm gonna
Right.
work you, and that was the mentality I grew up with. And I come to realize women aren't trying to hurt me.
Mhm.
Women are just trying the best to deal with. They're in survival mode, right? They're learning.
Yeah.
They've learned how to cope with their own pain, and so it comes out as hurtful, as hurt.
Mhm.
And so it makes me have to look at my own self. And so looking at my own behaviors, it's kind of like, there's moments where I can regress and want to be in the
Mhm.
behaviors. I'm not going to lie, during COVID, I took a huge step back,
Yeah.
and I can go a little bit into that without saying too much because of my husband's trial.
Sure.
Um, but, I had gone, when COVID hit, and this is the thing I really want us to address here, right, is mental health. We don't talk about mental health in our community. There's a stigma. There's like, we just numb it.
Right.
We don't deal with it. And that's why we have our community that's in so much hurt. But COVID took that away from all of us. It took
Yeah.
our stability. It caused uncertainty. We all are dealing with some kind of mental impact or mental. Okay, I say it correctly. I want to say it incorrectly, but we've been affected mentally, emotionally, and spiritually because of this experience.
Right.
So it makes it easier to talk about now because no one can say they were not impacted. And so when COVID hit, my contract at the ACLU had just ended after 3 years. This is the week of my dad passed away after he was my best friend, like the week they closed COVID, and then I had found myself in a very violent relationship after many years. Um, and it was like, wow, what a story! Like,
Yeah.
and I did really good from March to July, not to relapse. And that was one thing I always told myself: I'm not going to relapse over losing somebody. I was stronger than that, and I come to realize that wasn't the truth.
Mhm.
And it also showed me that I needed to learn how to grieve. We're not taught how to grieve, right? It's
No,
just
we're
something
not.
that coming from the street is normal. I lose somebody from an overdose, from getting shot. It's
Mhm.
just so normalized. But when it's something close to the heart, I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't have the tools. Um, and with Homegirls, we created this self-care self toolkit for self-care, and it's so cute because I work with the youth, but it's finding the things that help us go through moments when we're struggling. And so when COVID shut down everything, it took away my toolkit because in there I used to love to go hiking. I could go to the gym. I could hang out with my homegirls and process. I
Mhm.
can't do that anymore. So I got hit with three strikes to say, and then it's like I
Mhm.
lost my toolkit, and by July I was getting high,
Yeah.
and I experienced a lot. I was raped by my partner at the time, multiple times. the violence was very bad. And I've been sharing more about it now as I've begun my healing process to that. And then I met my husband, and he was my saving grace. But I also realized that was a behavior, though. I tend to find the men who are willing to protect me. And he was willing to protect me, but he also had his own hurts. But
Right.
I can't say too much after that. But
Yes.
the drug addiction was full blown until to the beginning of last year. I did have a small relapse within the previous year for 2 days, and it didn't feel good. It goes back to that, like, I had so much uncertainty going on. And in those 2 days, I got numb, thinking I could numb the uncertainty and not deal with it. But hold up, I have a whole bunch of happiness, and I
Wow.
was like the deepest depression for those, like, that next week of my come off, and it was a
Mm-hmm.
real eye opener for me again. But COVID took me back to a lifestyle that wow, I went harder than I did even when I back on the streets when I was a teenager in my 20s and 30s. And
Yeah.
it kind of scared me, though, because I realized, okay, I really have enhanced my leadership skills, but on the
Mm-hmm.
streets that could be very dangerous, right?
Yes.
And
Right.
so yeah, that's just really something important to talk about, because there's a lot of shame that people experienced during COVID, abuse, sexual abuse, all kinds of things within their home that they're just not ready to talk about, and I want to make sure it's talked about so people know
Mm-hmm.
that they can get help for it.
Yeah, that's so important. I mean, you highlighted what you personally went through,
Mhm.
and there's so many of us that went through things either similar or, that were unhealthy issues. The fact that you're talking about it, I just really admire that because COVID hit a lot of us really
Yeah.
hard. And I can only imagine, I was thinking about this the other day, years down the line, I can only imagine what the studies are going to show, like how it
Mhm.
affected, you know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
different age groups. And I'm sure it's going to relay some sort of,
Yeah.
issues and things that were developed during that time. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It-
I can definitely recall a lot of stories that happened within the home,
yeah.
people that I know, and even myself that
Yeah.
was just very deep. So thank you for
Of
sharing
course.
that. Yeah.
Of
Very inspiring to think that you were able to use the tools that you have learned and sort of get yourself back and remind yourself that you have a lot to be happy for as
And so people always ask me, like, but what made you change to, like, get back to where your life's at now?
well. Right.
From about, I almost say about 5 to 6 months before my husband was arrested here in
Hmm.
Tijuana. I was trying to get clean, and it's really hard when you're living a lifestyle that you have to be numb in, right?
Yeah.
But I began to try to utilize as many tools as I could since things were starting to open.
Hmm.
Um, Something for me that helps me is, my mornings are my mornings. It's my meditation. It's my process. It's time to hear my hype up girl music. It's time to journal. And I
Hmm.
would share that with people on social media. Even though I was still getting high, I would
Hmm.
still try to find a way to let you guys know that I'm trying. And it was the validation, and it was the love from the community and social media that, like, helped me get through those dark moments, like decorating my Christmas tree by myself. Like, I was so lonely on the couch, just like living in this broken world, and I wanted to come out of it. And it finally gave me the strength. I had to leave my husband because the lifestyle was something that it went against my values and morals, right? That I
Hmm.
had established over some time. And I was able to pull myself out. And I think, thank God, I recognized that there were some things I could begin to do to pull myself, remind myself of what my worth is, right? To remind
Right.
myself that I'm not that girl putting the needle in my arm. I wasn't the girl being raped. I wasn't the girl that it was okay for him to beat me and I wasn't fighting back anymore.
Hmm.
I was hurt, and I was able to begin to recognize this. And I'm still in the process of learning to forgive myself. And that's where
Right.
I'm at with that, because it's a part, like, I've forgiven myself from the past stuff and everybody else, but now there's some new trauma. But yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. I think people will find that comment you just made and let it. I mean, for me, anyways, forgiving myself always comes a lot more difficult than forgiving others. Do you think that's true for yourself?
Yes, I just, it's funny. I shared on social media the other day. I had a moment because I still live in the area where a lot of this stuff was occurring,
Hmm.
and me and my husband's old apartment is like 2 blocks down, and we were living in an apartment. We had no water, we had no electricity. It was thrashed. Um, and I don't choose to go by there too often, maybe twice since he's been locked up. Um, but the other day, because my husband, right now he's looking at 112 to life, and we're getting ready to go to trial
Mhm.
in May, and he's incarcerated. So that's hard enough, right? Being in a relationship without being able to really dig deep and heal the trauma that we experienced together.
Mhm.
So sometimes I will tend to throw at him the past.
Yeah.
And I'm so tired of being stuck there. And I came to realize, like, why can't I forgive him? And I went by the beach the other day. I drove by, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna drive by our old apartment. And it hit me. I gotta forgive myself. I have to forgive me because I did the best that I could with what I had,
Yeah.
and you know, that does not define me anymore. I won't
Mhm.
allow it to. And with that, it's letting me like kind of release and allowing me to like, okay, I'm forgiving myself. Okay. And it's making me take the pressure off them. But also right, stay within my values and beliefs at the same time.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Right. I like that, the way you said that. It's like it's baby steps even,
Hmm.
a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. I
Hmm.
feel like you understand that same thing that I have always told myself as well. Like there's something about getting outdoors, whether it be the beach or a hike or a walk, that really helps to ground you and bring you back, right?
That has been the saving grace for me at
Mhm.
times when 'cause I live here in Tijuana and I don't speak Spanish, so I get a lot
Yeah.
of hard criticism over here from it. So I tend to just isolate myself unless I'm going to San Diego with everybody and
Mhm.
doing my work. Um, but I have the beach right there. Those are moments like even when I was
Yeah.
still getting high and I was like, I would go to the beach and just cry and be like, talk to my higher power. Like just
Mhm.
having my feet in the sand would ground me. Watching the ocean just go because it made my little world seemed
Mhm.
so minimal compared to what was really going on. It was a safe space for me, and for me,
Mhm.
like, especially, and this thing also too coming out of COVID, so many of us have social anxiety.
Yes.
So when I'm able to go to the beach with myself and there's nobody around, okay, it's mine. It's mine again, and you feel the weight coming off. You don't have to carry. You realize you don't have to carry it alone, and so the
Mhm.
outside is my. Whew, I love being outside.
Yeah, definitely. I love that too. Maybe around like large groups of people, not so much. That's still difficult sometimes for me.
Yeah.
Is it for you as well?
Being in large groups of people.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, and it's funny because everybody's like, "You're so outgoing," and I am, but if I have people with me that I know, or if
Oh,
I'm in a space that I know that I can own my leadership, oh, I can. But when I'm by myself and I have to let people see, and a lot of it stems too because of my weight.
mhm.
Because when I was a little girl, I remember I would, I was overweight, and I would just like walk with my head down to the grocery store. Like I don't want nobody to see me because you're gonna see my shame, you're gonna see my fat, you're gonna see all the things that was going through my head.
Mhm.
Coming out of COVID, I feel like not the weight part. It's just they're gonna see me as somebody bad,
Mhm.
because I'm completely tatted. I have a certain, there's a certain belief about me here where I live, right? It's a little
Mhm.
different in California when I go across the border, but they're still like, oh, I'm just not gonna go to Walmart today. I just don't need to go when I really need to go because I just don't want to be in big spaces. It
Mhm.
overwhelms me. The anxiety kicks in, and I don't like that feeling.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that would be very difficult. I've
Yeah.
talked with a couple women that are there in TJ or somewhere nearby that have said that sort of the same thing. Like they've experienced a little bit of resistance, or I don't know. I'm probably going light on the word they use. They've had a difficult time because not being fluent in Spanish, or
Hmm.
just being obviously not from there. So
Yeah, and there,
an
like I said,
adjustment.
there's stigmas behind it. And I share this with people, and it's not to criticize. It's a culture, right?
Hmm.
It's also too. There's a belief, and there is a lot of violence that occurs behind people from our community because they're hurt, right? And they don't
Right.
have the resources that they have out here when they get deported. So there's a belief that
Hmm.
they're trying to steal. They're going to come up. They're going to rob us. So when I go into stores, even to, like to get my hair dye, or I go into the grocery store, there's always security following me.
Really?
Yes, and people thought I was making it up until my daughter started coming over here to visit me, and she gets angry too because it angers me. It
Yeah.
angers me because when I'm in the States, when I'm back home, is what I consider home. I
Mm-hmm.
can advocate for myself. I can
Mm-hmm.
speak in like, in a respectful way. Here I can't. I just gotta stay silent and
Right.
not be able to fend for myself. And it's it makes me devalue. Oh, take that back. I feel devalued because I
Mhm.
can't value myself, and that shame comes back onto me. So
Right.
it's like I'm not trying to rob nothing. I got money.
Right. Like I'm gonna pay for this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I bet it does feel that way for
Mhm.
sure. Yeah, I can relate to what you said as well. Like we feel like a lot of the times people can see whatever we're going through our eyes, whether that be you had mentioned the struggles with your weight. And
Mhm.
I've always fluctuated up and down my entire life. I can remember since like 10 years old having, issues and feeling that way. And you do feel like I feel like that way anyways. Like I carry that all in my face, in my eyes, and as if other people can see it in us.
And
But
they're feeling
we
the same way that we feel about ourselves inside.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
definitely,
Uh,
definitely.
that's really a lot of weight to carry.
Right?
No pun
Yeah, it's
intended.
so I can relate to that for sure. I'm sure a lot of women can actually. What do you feel like younger generations right now, like are you're talking to a lot of youth, right? What do you feel like they are offering? What do you feel like they're bringing to the table that maybe mine and your generation didn't have to I don't know, maybe we weren't so in touch with at the time.
I think they're embracing things that we grew up culturally that we should have been that we were told to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
You know, I was sharing with you earlier. Me and my homegirl Cynthia are getting ready to do a live IG live next week,
Up to
talking
send.
about what it's like growing up in our culture,
Hmm.
being plus size women, and how we're empowered now.
Hmm.
And this thought came to my mind because I have an 8-year-old daughter, the daughter I wasn't there for, the one whose father raised her, and I was in and out of her life. And she's in my life. She's like if you guys see my picture, she's like my little miniature me.
Your twin, yeah.
My twin, she's my twin.
Yeah.
And she carries her weight so beautifully, like she owns it. And I
Yes.
got to make sure that what I was taught, those comments are made to her, right?
Mm.
Like maybe you should not wear such a crop top shirt. You're beautiful, like she's beautiful no matter what. But it's what I was been told growing up, or what I thought, or what I wanted and couldn't do that she can do now and be empowered by it.
Hmm.
And I think it's such a huge conversation about owning your thickness, owning your plus size. It's beautiful.
Hmm.
I grew up in a generation when I don't even know where the mine are at, but like your bones should be popping out at your hips.
Yeah.
That was like that flat stomach, and it was just like
That was the
that
thing.
was never me. That was never
Right.
me. I remember
Right.
wanting to be the homegirl that wore the little tube tops or the halter, but I couldn't
Hmm.
because there was like, oh, why is she wearing that? And there was comments made about me when I ever did try. But our youth today are so open to it, to talk about, to share their exercise journeys.
Hmm.
And it's like, God, it's like you guys make me feel so positive. I can go to the gym and wear a crop shirt and my leggings, and I don't care
Yeah.
what anybody else thinks. um I think that's what I'm learning, like just the viewpoints of them are so different. Also, to being able to talk about being empowered women. you
Hmm.
know um Growing up, it was like, you don't talk. You just, you
Right.
be with a him and he can talk for you.
Hmm.
It was just so much that's so different than today. And I think the empowerment of women, and why I love Homegirls to Go to Stone, is because when I talk to the older homegirls and we do these groups, they're just like, they don't know what empowerment is.
Hmm.
They don't. And our youth are talking about it on social media. We didn't have social media. We used to be on the phone lines, right?
Yes.
The
Long
phone
phone
lines.
cord. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't talk about those things. It was like, hey, what's up? Like that was the
Right.
conversation back then. But over here, it's like real. It's not. I don't like to call it content, because it's really not content. It's the
Hmm.
reality of who they are today, right? So I
Right.
think that's more embraced, that our youth are teaching us, and teaching us
Hmm.
that it's okay to talk about these things.
Yes. Yeah. Shout out to our youth for bringing that
Woo,
awareness
yes.
to us. You guys are doing it.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Yes. So
And
much.
I really like that. This is a question, like I'm trying to see how to word this, because some people will probably
Mm,
comment and say, well, how do you say, okay, you're an empowered woman and still be in a relationship with a man and have
mm,
feminine energy with him? Because there's a lot of talk with is a woman being too masculine in the relationship? Is she carrying her feminine energy? There's a lot of judgment there. How
Oh
do you
yeah.
feel about that?
I used to be really angry about it at first, especially
Okay.
coming into the work that I do. It was a very male dominated space for a long time. Even on the streets, right? Like us women
Yeah.
don't have the space. We're not in meetings, for the hood, representing our hood. It's a very masculine space. But I've grown up because I had to raise my dad in his alcoholism.
Mhm.
I had to protect myself as best that I could. So I carried a very, as someone would say, I guess, a masculine energy, but
Mhm.
it was, for me, it was a coping mechanism. It was control. It led into my relationships, and it still does impact. I'm trying to find a balance between both my femininity and my masculine.
Mhm.
But I think when I got into this work, I was very angry because I would get shut down. How dare you be too emotional? Just disregarding any kind of thoughts that I had. That's why I think that I kind of stepped away predominantly from that nonprofit world,
Mhm.
and some of the work that's being done, because it still has those beliefs. And I don't need to be fighting to be able to do the work that I'm so passionate about, or question me and myself as a woman. You
Right.
know, that's why we started off as Homegirlz de Corazon, and we're now beginning to bridge into cement into our program, right?
Mhm.
Working with our youth. But at first was being able to be, I need to find a balance.
Yeah.
I don't need to be kicking with the vatos all the time, because I
Mhm.
got homegirls that are just as loving, who are looking out for me in an emotional space that I need. I can have authentic conversation with them. And there's nothing wrong with me having emotions. I'm
Right.
human. And I think in this world, like, you come off too strong. No, you just need to work on yourself and look like, why am I triggering you?
Yeah.
And that I can't carry the weight of everybody else's what they think I am. I gotta live with my own stuff. I'm working to forgive myself from my own hurts. I'm focused on a daily basis, being conscious of my behaviors, right? Because if
Mhm.
not, it's real quick to go back to that lifestyle. It's so
Oh,
quick to
yeah.
throw away everything. So I think that is a big thing.
Mhm.
But we do carry the weight of the world sometimes on our shoulders, right?
Yeah. You do.
There is, um, my husband's incarcerated, and we don't know how much time he's going to do. I have to be independent. I have to learn to nurture myself
Mhm.
as a woman in a marriage, but alone. I have to learn to be okay to go disturbing myself. I have to make sure my doors are locked and that I'm protected by myself.
Right.
And I know he sometimes can feel like that's taken away from him, and that's a big conversation we have a lot. But
Mhm.
I'm going to own who I am. As long as I'm not doing it to hurt people, I will
Mhm.
stand strong in my truth, and I'm a powerful woman.
You are. Yes, you are. I love that. I love that. How do you pour into yourself with being in a marriage where your husband, isn't coming home technically, through that door every day? How do you pour into yourself and make yourself feel the best you can be to show up for you and for your husband?
Um, I think what I've learned, right, is like I have my self
Hmm.
care tools that I give to self love myself. But also too, I've learned that there's still a void, right? I still want, when our partners are incarcerated or our loved ones are incarcerated, it takes away from us women the ability to nurture.
Yes.
So when my husband gets sick, I want to be there to take care of him, to nurture him, to make sure he's going to be okay, you know, um, but I can't. And
Hmm.
so I think there's a tendency for women to jump into relationships with men who are incarcerated. It's a cultural thing, it's a pop thing. It's
Hmm.
not understanding the pain that goes behind it. And I think for me, taking it to the next level is recognizing, okay, I have a void.
Hmm.
I have needs that need to be met too, which means I love to care for people, predominantly my partner, and I can't the way I want to. So I need to find ways to pour that into my loved ones. And it's helping me be a better mother. It's helping me be an amazing homegirl. It's allowing me to give it to the community. So that
Hmm.
part that I can't give him because he's in there is giving it to the community. It's giving to the youth. And I think that takes away that emptiness that I sometimes lack in. And so for me, it's really that, and learning to know that no matter what, I'm gonna be okay. You
Yeah.
know, and that I can make it through this, because I gotta be strong for him too. Like, we can't really talk about it over the phone because of his case still, but there's a lot of fear.
Sure.
Imagine spending majority of your life, more than half of your life incarcerated. Why the fuck was I, excuse my language? Why was I even born?
Yeah.
And he
It's
carried
God.
that without talking too much about it, right?
Hmm.
And so I think with him, just learning to support him the best that I can, really having to begin to check myself again, forgive myself so I can forgive him for the past. But I'm
Mhm.
feeding into my community, feeding into my loved ones, and it shows. It really shows.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I mean, like I said, just from following you on social media and stuff, there's videos that you make, and I sometimes will see it and be like, man, I really needed that today. I really needed to see you uh, going out and getting flowers for yourself. You know what I mean? Like, that
Yes.
might sound silly to someone that doesn't get
Mhm.
it, but
Right.
that hit me, and I was like, yeah, I need to do that too, you know?
Because we're not taught those are the right things to do. Like it has to be given to us, and that. And I started buying roses for myself when I started working at the ACLU. I
Mhm.
love roses. That's why I implemented into our curriculum. Right, it represents who Homegirl the Corazon is.
Right.
But I remember like going to Trader Joe's, and they weren't that expensive, and they were beautiful. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna buy me some roses and take them to work for me. And I remember staff would come in like, who bought you those roses? Myself.
Mhm.
Really? And they were so shocked that I would have the ability to do that for myself because they didn't understand that that was a possibility. And then I would see them start doing it for themselves. It was like, this
See?
is, we're teaching self love through
Right.
action, right? And so I found myself because, I've been struggling financially a little bit. I'm on my own, and
Mhm.
I have a car that drives me nuts. So I haven't bought me roses in a long time. And I had a moment yesterday that was, I shared on my social media that like I had a rough moment with the youth. I
Mhm.
felt belittled, and so I need to do something good for me. So I bought my roses, and it was just like, I got me roses. And then it
Yes, and they look
reminded
beautiful.
myself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you absolutely deserve them for sure. I love that. I love that. And there
Mhm.
are difficult moments, and it's
Mhm.
inspiring to hear you say like how you dealt with that, and it was a healthy way in dealing with a moment that was like a struggle, like you said.
Well, working with the youth in the juvenile system, I have to remind myself those are little versions of us,
Oh
or
yeah.
versions of us, right? And so I've had to like, there's moments where they're just, I gotta understand too, they're dealing with a lot of stuff in there and that they don't talk
Mhm.
about, and like things will trigger them. So it will be reactive in the groups that I do.
Mhm.
And then it's like, don't, my mentality, my ego and pride are like, don't you know who the heck I am? Like, really, like, do you
Right.
not know? And I want to show up to them like that, but I can't. I can't throw my hurt or my ego and pride onto them. So it's like, I got to go to the gym.
Yeah.
I gotta buy me rose. I gotta do something to make me feel good, to remind me of my worth. That what
Mhm.
has led me to that moment with them, right? And so you have to have tools to work with, to work with people who are trauma impacted.
Right. I hear
Yeah.
you mentioned that several times now, the tools. Like, it sounds like that really helps to center you in a
Yeah.
situation, and that's something that all of us really can look for when we're feeling, maybe
Yeah.
like we're going to get out of character or go back to our old ways. It's
Mhm.
important to have tools, right?
Yeah. And I think when I created the curriculum, the curriculum was created off my own healing experience. It's learning
Mhm.
to write your own story instead of letting the world tell you your story behind your trauma, right? What a bad person you are.
Mhm.
And so when the toolbox came into place, and because I'm a visual learner, I have to have a visual. So what I do in the juvenile halls in our groups, even with the older women, like we have these little like pink toolboxes that we fold up and we decorate them. And this is the things you put your affirmations. These are things that are the reminders. So when things get rough, you can stick your hand physically in there and pull something out. What can I do to take care of myself? Because
Mhm.
out of my experience out of COVID, I didn't have that. I should
Right.
have had some more tools in there. So as a visual learner, and it helps because I have ADHD as well,
Mhm.
which a majority of us in this world that people have just haven't been diagnosed. Is that, oh wow, this is kind of cool and it's beautiful. I want to keep this thing. The little girls would have them in their cells, and so yeah, it's something very positive because if I don't, I need those little reminders. I need them. Like I have
Mhm.
affirmation cards on my tables because I need to just walk by. If I don't even read it, I know there's something I'm doing something positive for myself.
That's right. I love that. How does that work with you, going out and speaking with the youth, or can people reach out to you and ask, like, request for you to come, somewhere and speak to the youth?
Yes, I love doing. I think that's like my superpower is my
Mhm.
voice. So that's where my strength is. I love going and speaking to the youth. I love speaking to the women and the men. I speak at different facilities.
Mhm.
So yeah, it can be reached out like that. For me, getting involved in this work, what can I say, was something that being very not confident about myself
Mhm.
physically growing up for a long time, not liking how I looked all the time, just worrying about everybody thought about me, and not really like trusting my voice. I guess because that's what I was told not to do, is trust my voice, right?
Mhm.
I think it's the most empowering ability to go out there and speak with our youth,
Mhm.
because I'm only sharing the truth. And that's why I think people are so many are attracted to my story or my
Mhm.
experience with the work that we're doing. It's because it's authentic.
I was
I talked
just
to
going to say
Beth.
that it's very
Yeah.
authentic, and you can feel that.
It's so funny. People tell me that all the time. Like, I can feel your energy. It's so
Mhm.
unreal. And it feels good because remember, this her little girl, little Maria Elena, didn't ever feel like that because of the things she experienced. And
Mhm.
now I'm feeding that back into her. And I'm setting an example for my daughter, my 8-year-old daughter who's the most vulnerable right now and needs a
Mhm.
mom. And I see her thriving and her just standing up for herself, or like, no, I'm not going to do this kind of relationship with a guy. And it's like, wow, I
Right.
needed you.
Isn't
And I
that
realized that
funny?
is me.
Yeah. That is you through her now. Like, that's
Yeah.
so beautiful to see
Yeah.
how that has shifted. I mean, even if at that age we weren't experiencing that, how the work that you are doing and putting
Yeah.
into yourself and others, and now your
Yeah.
children is manifesting in their lives, and it's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing to see.
Thank you. I'll be honest. I have 5 children, but I have two that don't want a relationship with me, and I have to respect that and allow their
Mhm.
own healing process. It couldn't have been forced down my throat. It happened when it was meant to be. I just got to continue being the example, because I have so much love to give, and I share it with everybody else. So why wouldn't I want to give it to my own children? But I
Mhm.
think going back to the authentic part of this work is that when you begin to heal, those masks come off. Though I had masks.
Well, me
I
too.
wanted you to believe that I was something I really wasn't, and I worked hard at it, and I went hard behind that. And
Yeah.
I think that's the conversations we have as women coming from our community, with living with the drug addiction, the abuses that we experience in and out of our homes, community
Mhm.
violence, hurt women. Like,
Yes.
we need to talk about these. We need to remove those masks. We have to look at those layers, or we're going to continue this hurt and teaching our generation to continue this behavior. Women
Mhm.
are not going to hurt us. That's our own hurt we've experienced. Now we got to be able to embrace and love each other. And that is such a beautiful gift that I hope that we can begin to spread more than it already is, right? But
Mhm.
from our generations, right? Like, the
Yeah.
younger youth are talking about it. But now us as older women begin to forgive ourselves, forgive those who have hurt us, and own it. And it's okay to be real. That
Mhm.
is such the most loving gift you can give yourself, is being real.
You're right. You're absolutely right. There's such a I can I mean, there's such a thing, how do you call it? Like a stigma that we felt, like our generation growing up, and like you had mentioned, and the next woman is like out to get us in some way,
Mhm,
or we were always looking at like, okay, well, what does she want from me, or why is, you know
mhm,
what I mean? What's up with
mhm,
the why is she being cool right now, or
mhm,
but I had a conversation recently, and I've just barely like into my adulthood. Like, I'm a grandmother, so my real adulthood starting to have female friendships that are real, you know.
mhm,
And the other day, I was having a conversation, and it was so true. A friend of mine said,
mhm.
"You know what? When you get a compliment from another woman, that's the best feeling ever because you
Yeah.
know she means it. Like, you know, she was referring to like if a maybe a guy told her, "Oh, you look good" or something, that's
Mhm.
he's hitting on her, you know?
Yeah.
But when another female was like, "Wow, you really look beautiful," or "I love that
Mhm.
hair color or that
Yeah.
lipstick," and it just feels good to receive that from another woman.
Because it doesn't come with an intention behind it, right? It's someone
Yeah.
being authentically telling you what they really believe about you. We
Mhm.
talk about, like, talk about like a man hitting on you. He has an intention behind that.
Mhm.
And imagine what a woman had to dig through to be able that confident to tell another woman those kind of comments that are positive. That
Yeah,
shows that woman has done a lot of growth,
right.
and it speaks volumes. It speaks volumes.
It really does. And it's
Mhm.
helped even myself like learn as I go on throughout my day. There was a situation where there's a store that I have to go into regularly. And there was a woman there that I could feel her, you know, you could feel someone's energy is very standoffish and like not she did not want nothing to do with me, you know? But I just and it was a real compliment. You know, I gave her a compliment on I'm like, I really love your hair. Like, who does your hair? And you should have like you could just
Mhm.
see that feeling of aggression or tense melt off of her
Yeah.
face, like okay, you know, she's here
Yep.
just like me. And it sometimes
Mhm.
that's all it takes is just showing each other like some love, a compliment, like something genuine.
So true. I have those moments all the time, like there's like people see me and there's a certain belief that I'm a certain kind of way, right?
Hmm.
Like I can't be a nice person or I can't do something good for other people. And when I do, they're so shocked or like just like the compliments, right?
Hmm.
It's so natural. It's
Yeah.
so natural. And like you said, you literally feel the weight of the world fall off their shoulders. Like,
Hmm.
because a lot of times we're carrying those, oh my God, what people think about me? Because even people that aren't from our community have those same feelings. So when somebody outside of what they've known can do that, it's just
Hmm.
10 times more value than someone of their
Yeah.
own kind telling them that.
That's true. That's so true. And shout out to the homeboys, by the way, that do give
Mhm.
compliments without the intention behind it. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Because they
yes.
are there. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
you know what, they really are. We gotta give credit to our men because these conversations are really beginning to happen. It's changing our community, it's changing our prison system, it's
Yes.
sharing, and I think that's what kind of makes me not have regret marrying my husband who's incarcerated, because
Hmm.
I know who he is, I know what kind of loving person that he is, but people will assume certain things because of his charge, right?
Hmm.
But because I know he's working on himself, that I know that he's looking at these things, this is why I stick it in, because men can change too. Like men, like we got to give them credit, and that's what they need. And even if it's uncomfortable to them, our men have to carry so much more weight than we do, or okay, or looks different than what we know.
Yeah,
They.
it's a different way. It's a
Hmm.
different, yeah. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that you mentioned that. It's without, like you said, without delving into any details, how do you as a woman feel? Okay, you're looking at this marriage obviously for the long haul with your husband.
Yeah.
I'm sure you face judgment from other people. Um,
Yeah.
how do you go forward without letting that consume you?
Um, I think love has to be priority, right? Love is the most beautiful thing, and thank goodness I understand how our trauma, first of all, understand people's trauma. I'm an empath, which is a gift and a curse at the same time.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I love it because I can be empathetic to his trauma he's experienced, the things that
Mhm.
he doesn't talk about, understanding why he's made the choices he made, or was in defense mode, or any kind of way that he was
Mhm.
reactive to something, because I know his story. When
Right.
you get to know somebody and their story, it changes how the rest of the world sees them. So I no longer give the power to what people believe
Mhm.
about who they think he is, or anyone in the system, right? Who
Mhm.
am I to judge? I
Right.
have no room. And going back into the work, because remind you, before COVID and everything, I was already in my leadership space, fell back into my old ways, and then came back into my leadership space. So it
Mhm.
was really hard because his case is out there, and so there's like this stigma, like, oh, she's a bad person now.
Right.
So, but it helped pick out the weeds of who I work with and don't work with. Fine, pick
Sure.
yourself out of my garden, please,
Yes.
because I'm not going to stop loving him because you're not willing to understand his story. You're
Right.
not willing to dive into your own story, right?
Yeah.
It's easier for you to be in that space of convicting somebody before he's ever gone to
Yes.
court or understanding his story. And so I don't give people that power, and
Mhm.
it fuels my fire to do this work.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I have this hashtag "Wives Fight in Life" because yes, I'm a woman, a wife fighting a life sentence with my husband,
Mhm.
but I'm also living my life in the process. And I think that's what helps me feel empowered and not allow anyone to make me feel bad about it.
Right.
Cool. You don't got to be a part of my story, but at least I know that I'm healing in mine. And I hope that they will at some point.
Mhm.
But I don't allow it to control me, because if I do, I know where I will lead myself to, right
Right.
behind that hurt. So I
Right.
allow it to empower me today.
That's right. I
Yeah.
definitely love that. There's so many people that can learn from what you just said too. And there's people that just, and I don't mean this in any, offensive kind of way, that are just ignorant
Yeah.
to what
Yeah.
happens, as far as our generational curses and the system. And maybe, just listening to something like this, they can learn that,
Yeah.
this is something that we are dealing with, we're choosing to face head on. it might not be your choice, but we can all respect each other's
Yeah.
lives and choices, right?
Exactly. And I think, that's really important to call out the ignorance and
Yes.
because there's opportunities to learn.
Hmm.
There's these conversations that are being had, and it's also not just ignorance, it's a mix of ignorance and also not understanding because they haven't
Right.
grown up around it. And
Yes.
so or they have not been allowed, they haven't given themselves the time to heal, to recognize, oh wow, maybe I have a lot more in common with them through my
Hmm.
hurt than I never thought that I could possibly have. And so you can't give people power if you don't give it to them. And that's what I've learned. And I
Right.
think I always have this conversation with myself because I love to talk to myself, right?
Right.
I entertain the heck out of myself. Is that it's like I'm not gonna fight with anyone. And
Yeah.
if they're gonna throw ugliness and I'm not just responding, who are they gonna fight with?
Right.
So it's like
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
gonna
I
look
have
real stupid if they're just fighting with themselves, right?
it's like I have these trolls that will, like, if I have something that on social media that gets a lot of views or comments, they'll start throwing things about my looks.
Yes.
There's
I know,
nothing worse that
girl.
I have thought about myself in the past. I'm good. Like, I'm
Right.
not going to respond. I can just hide it. Like, oh well. And you're going to
Hmm.
continue in your hurt. And I pray for you. I wish you the best, and I hope that you can find the hope that I've had for myself.
Hmm.
But I'm not going to play into that ignorance. I'm not going to play into it. And I'm going to call something out really quick too.
Hmm.
There's still ignorance in our own community because there are still women that are prison wives that are out here making a big thing on social media, which is important, right? Our
Hmm.
loved ones' stories are important, but they're out of their own hurt they haven't dealt with. They're criticizing other women
Yeah.
because they don't do things the way they do, or if they don't like the feedback they're getting on their content, whatever their work they're putting out there, then
Hmm.
they're talking bad about other women because of body figures or what they can't have, or and it's like we gotta stop being mean girls. Like really,
Hmm.
there's movies out there about us. It might look different, but the
Yeah.
behaviors are still the same. And what I've learned is that when people attack, it's from their own hurt. It has nothing to do with me anymore. I've carried the weight on of the world on my shoulders,
Hmm.
believing everything of what I thought the world thought about me because of their hurt. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm
I
I, I'm
love
gonna love myself.
Right. I love that you said that and you brought that up because I'm
Mhm,
looking at, I have an incarcerated loved one, but I'm not the wife
mhm,
of an incarcerated person. But I have noticed just from, doing the work that I do and interviews, just being completely honest, that community in interviewing prison wives, I have noticed some of the most aggressive, toxic,
mhm,
um, between each other, not towards
yeah,
me, but
yeah,
and I
yeah,
thought, wow, it really took me by surprise that there
yeah,
wasn't more of a supportive, I don't
yeah.
know, intention behind it. It seemed very catty in some situations.
Mhm.
And then there are some that are very supportive, but it kind of took me off guard.
Yeah, it's like this. It's not a pop contest. It's not a hype. It's we're living in trauma. Like
Right.
choosing to be with someone who, or having a family member who's incarcerated. You're participating in their life. It's traumatic.
Hmm.
Like the things that we have to do to go visit. The things like my life. I 5 days a week, 6 days a week. I'm in either a juvenile system
Hmm.
here in San Diego, in Ventura County, or my husband. I'm going in out of facilities. That's traumatic.
That's a
Having to just, yeah. And so that's why the self care is so important, right? Because if
yeah.
not, I'll take myself out in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So imagine if I don't work on myself, what an ugly person I would be. Like, and so it's like, if you want to be a better support for your loved ones, do it for you first, right? But
Hmm.
don't cause more trauma in our community, making it harder for the rest of us to be there for our loved ones. And
Right.
so we got to do better. I'm that person. I will call stuff out, not to be mean, but to
Hmm.
be like, hey, let's do better. Let's empower each other. Let's not look for the hurt in the other person to break them apart to make me feel good. Let's
Hmm.
uplift them because we want our family members to come home. We have a system to fight. And if the
Right.
system gets off on us fighting because we're
Oh
too busy fighting each other, that we can't make any change in
right.
our
We
community.
won't
So,
accomplish anything
mhm,
if we
yeah.
continue to focus on each other. You're right.
It proves continuously what the system says about us. So we're just giving them the hype to be able to back up what they say about our community.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
people that are listening to this, keep that in mind. Keep that in
Yes.
mind for sure. Now, how can
Mhm.
people contact you if they wanted? Well, obviously, I highly recommend just subscribing, like following your IG. I really want to like help and pour into anything I can and support it in any way in my little corner over here. So
Well, I'm so grateful for your big corner because it's very big for me, and I want to honor you for creating this space, right? Because I've been wanting to do a YouTube page for so long, and I get started and it takes so much work and passion for it, right? So I'm out here in the community doing the work, but you're right here doing it, and I thank you for that because you inspire me. Like I was talking to that first time, like I want to do YouTube, but I don't know how to.
yeah,
And you just offering to kind of give me a little guidance was like, wow, that's a big thing because most people be like, oh, that's good. I don't need her in my way. And
right.
you were very open and loving about it. And I appreciate you so much for that. So my space though is IG because I'm a visual
Yes.
and I like to speak in short terms right
Okay.
now. So I'm on Instagram at Homegirls that go to Son, which is our main page.
Right.
Also IG, I have my personal page, which is Mrs. R with a Z at Homegirls that go to Son.
Okay.
Um, and then on Instagram, Homegirls that go to Son too.
Yes. Yes.
So those are my platforms right now,
Okay.
and I'll be honest, it's very sporadic. I'm
Mhm.
not trying to be specific. I have so many layers in my life, and I share it with everybody. Whether it's the trauma, whether it's working with the
Mhm.
youth in the juvenile system, whether it's my story as a wife fighting life, whether if
Mhm.
it's I'm dealing with ADHD or I'm struggling with my weight today, or I'm
Mhm.
just learning how to be a better mom. There's so many layers to it. So I'm all over the place, but that's what makes me special.
Yeah. Yes. I love
So,
that.
and I will own it.
I love that. So definitely, I'll have like all of your socials down in the description
Perfect.
of this video so people
Yes.
can follow and support. And when you get to the point where you start feeling like you're going to upload on YouTube, keep that definitely in your back pocket. I'll have
Thank
anything
you.
I can to help, with whatever I can for you to start doing that when you're ready. But you do have your plate full with everybody that you're helping and your own life. So I get it. Like,
Yeah.
but the knowledge you're sharing is priceless.
Well, thank you.
It
I
really
think
is like therapy. I'm telling you.
thank you. I've come to realize I have had to become the person I needed when I was a little girl.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think that's the most beautiful gift. People will hear my journey and they're shocked when I get
Mhm,
really raw and real about it. And I have to be raw and real. People need to
mhm,
know it's okay to be who you are. It's okay to talk about your hurts. Don't hold it in. Don't hold yourself hostage. Like, you can, and this goes even like bigger than just the incarcerated
mhm.
community. Like, you can be a prisoner of your own mind, and that's more painful, I think, than being inside a cell because there's tools for it, and if you're not reaching out for them or trying to find some way to heal those parts, it's a
Mhm.
painful place to be. And I spent a lot of time hurting myself and others behind that prison.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I am just so inspired by you, and
Well, thank
I'm
you.
honored to have you as a guest, especially during the month of the woman.
Woo. Yes.
So shout
It
out
should
to
be the
you.
year of the woman, but it's okay.
You're
We'll
the
get there.
woman, right? Exactly. So I thank you for coming on and making the time for this. I want to stay in touch, like I said, and I just want to be a part of whatever you're doing. That's for sure.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
shout out to Sin also. I noticed that.
Woo.
Yes, I gotta have her on one day as well. So I
Yes, please
see
do.
now you guys are partnering on this together, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, because
okay.
I started Homegirls back in 2019 was the founding year, but it was just me. I had my homegirls that were a part of it in and
Hmm.
out, but it wasn't until this last year where I felt safe enough to actually build a team and
Hmm.
allow them into the safe space for me. And so Sin is our vice chair of our board of directors. And
Nice.
she was just one of those women that who had the courage like yourself, right, to just reach out to me on social media just from hearing my message,
Hmm.
and she was inspired, and I was like, I'm inspired by you for having the courage to reach out to me.
Right?
And a couple of weeks later, we were having tacos down at Vario Logan, just chatting it
Oh,
up. And she's one of my closest and dearest friends. And, I think I made the best decision by opening up this space to other women because I can't just keep it to myself. This work is meant to be shared with the world. And we want to
mhm.
change lives and we want to be out there to inspire. And so she inspires me so much. And she's my road dog.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that and for sharing, all of the work and the tools that you have with us because it's making a huge impact already. I can
Well, thank
speak for
you.
myself, and I'm sure so many others.
Thank you. Well, my goal at some point is to be able to make this work available online. I am not online savvy, but
Mhm.
I know this. I can't be everywhere in the world, but it could change lives. So we're looking to maybe do workshops via Zoom or whatever way we can find it, so it's available to others. So stay
I think,
tuned.
yes. Oh, we will, and I'll keep this updated here. Definitely, I think that is a genius idea. It could be helping so many others, and like you said, you can't be everywhere at once, but if you
I
get
can
it
be
going
everywhere.
online, yeah,
Yep.
for sure, for
Mm,
sure. But I will be tapping back in with you in the future. Keep everyone updated. You guys have to go follow Maria on Instagram, and eventually whatever other platform she has, I will have that in the description box. For today, I want to thank you once again. Much love and appreciation to you. And you guys like, subscribe, follow, support. We're all here for each other, and let's just lift each other up. And in the end, remember to always keep your hearts convicted.